Well, it's a huge subject. And I have to speak to you from a Western perspective. I don't live in the Philippines, I live in Australia. And there is over Australia and the Western world, I mean Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States of America, and Western Europe, what I would call a cloud, a dark cloud of gay, lesbian, homosexual rights. I'm not saying that because I hate homosexuals or gay people or lesbian people. I don't hate them. I'm just identifying the problems we have with this movement. It is like a cloud over Western culture. Okay, can you hear me at the back? Okay. I think the cloud is coming to the Philippines. I don't know whether it will ever get here, but I suspect in another generation it may arise. When you get a new generation of congressmen and news media and influential people, things may change here, and not for the better. But I don't know the future. I think it's a possibility. My subject is the rise of sexual identity and the Christian response. Hopefully we'll stop about 7 o'clock for merienda and then carry on. The first question I have is, how did we get here? So again, I'm speaking from my experience in Australia. How did we get here? How did we get from God made man in his image, male and female, he made man to rule over his creation as his representatives, as his ambassadors, to 71 genders. 71 genders of choice available on Facebook. That's a lot, isn't it? 71 different genders. How did we get from God made man in his image, male and female, to your body is your gender, male or female, let your sexual identity be conformed to it. From that to your desires, what you want, your desires are your gender, let your sexual orientation be conformed to it. Gender identity is how you perceive yourself. In the gay rights movement, there are many different gender identities. 71, I have already told you, according to Facebook. Gender identity is how you perceive your identity. Male, female, non-binary, which is no sexuality whatsoever, transgender, or gay, or lesbian, or transitioning from one to another, or many other choices. That is your gender identity. So I'm speaking now from this world. That is your gender identity. Your sexual identity, or your sexual orientation, is to whom you are romantically or sexually attracted. You have a wide choice. 71. It could be one of the 71, or you could be bisexual and be attracted to more than one, perhaps many. So I hope you've all got that clear. Gender identity, what gender you perceive yourself to be. Sexual identity, sexual orientation, who you are romantically, sexually attracted to. Remember, there are 71 genders of choice available on Facebook, and according to the gay rights movement, your desires are your gender, what you want to be is your gender, and let your sexual orientation be conformed to what you want. You're free to choose what you want. The best way to understand how we got here Again, I'm speaking from the West because it's arrived in the West. I'm warning you that it's probably coming to the Philippines. The best way to understand how we got here is to understand where we came from. I call that in your outline the grand narrative of God. It begins with the creation of a perfect world, and then came the fall. And Satan's temptation to Adam and Eve is that they would be as God, right? They would be as God, wise, knowing good from evil. We get the same ideas reiterated or repeated in Romans chapter 1, where Paul says, they became fools, seeking wisdom, claiming to be wise, they became fools. Man seeks wisdom without God. That is the essential nature of the fall, that man seeks to be as God, knowing good from evil, being wise without God. And the effect of that fall of man seeking to be as God is as drinking from a poisoned well. We all get poisoned. It's like our desires, what we want, what we think will make us happy, become motivationally twisted. We want things that are not good for us. This has spun out, this has come out from the fall. James Packer says, sinfulness marks everyone from birth and is there in the form of a motivationally twisted heart. We want things that are not good for us. Augustine says, even infants are born sinners. That is true. The Westminster Confession says everything that is human has been corrupted and defiled by our fall into sin. It has spun out, it has come out like the ripples from a rock throwing in a pond from the fall. We, mankind, are like a ruined masterpiece, a ruined Rembrandt, or a ruined Van Gogh, or a magnificent building. You can see that it was a magnificent building, but it is ruined. Is homosexuality the root of all sin? I don't think so. Is it the end of all sin? Or where all sin leads to homosexuality? I don't think so. It is an abomination because it undoes the work of the creation order. But gay, lesbian rights, the gay movement, is the fruit of something a great deal deeper and more foundational than homosexuality. The root of this problem is pride. We shall be as God. We shall know good from evil. Pride is the black, hardened basalt rock that effortlessly supports the sins of mankind. Pride is the poisoned weed that grows easily in every ambiance, in every heart, in every country, in every tribe, in every nation. Rosaria Butterfield, she is a very interesting person. She was, I think she remains, a professor in an American university in English and in gender identity, or gender rights. She's a very intelligent woman. She was a lesbian. She has written 2 or 3 books. She entered into correspondence with a gentleman from the Reformed Church. Quite by accident, they exchanged letters, they got to know each other, and she was drawn into conversation with him. She was invited into their home. The pastor was married, and over a passage of a year or so, gradually she was drawn into the Christian faith. out of the lesbian world and into the Christian world. She said it was like a train wreck. A train wreck. You know, when a train crashes off the tracks? In her world, in her lesbian world, it was a happy world for her. It was supportive. She was well loved. It was a good community. They were all friends. And then she left that community and joined the Christian world, where some people were still suspicious of her and regarded her as a threat. A threat. She said it was like a train crash. I have 2 of her books written down there. She writes about the subject of homosexual rights. She's a Christian now. She's a very intelligent woman and a good writer. If you want to read her books, I commend them. But she says this, I'm still talking about this question of pride. She says, we suffer not because we are gay, but because we were proud. We wanted autonomy, self-rule. It was our hearts first and our bodies followed. We suffer because we are proud. We shall be as God. We shall decide right from wrong. We shall decide how we shall live. And that's where sexual identity, sexual orientation of choice, sexual identity of choice comes from. So the question I'm going to face into now is how we got here to where we are now in the Western world. How did we make the passage from a universal acceptance of a man and a woman, that's a man and that's a woman, and everyone believes that throughout the Western world? How did it come to pass that what was believed 50 years ago about a man is a man, a woman and is a woman, and a man marries a woman, and that's it, is now doubted and seen as bigoted and hateful? Well, it's not a straight journey. If you're going to catch a jeepney, you go out there, turn Kaliwa and derecho. But the story, our story of how we've come from male and female, male marries female, female marries male, and that's it. It's like a large black iron cooking pot, a big pot about this big, and there's a fire underneath it. And in the pot has gone mankind, who is twisted and broken by sin. And there's a fire underneath this large black iron pot, and it's lit by Satan. And other things are going to go into the pot, because his ambition is always to destroy mankind. The first thing on our list is the Enlightenment. You have to know this. I don't care if you've never heard of the Enlightenment. You have to know something of our history. Gay lesbian rights didn't just fall out of the sky like a bird flying overhead and pooping on your head. It comes out of our history. So the first thing you need to look at is the Enlightenment, 1700 to 1800. The Enlightenment is the age of reason, of individuality and democracy. Before the Enlightenment, the world was governed by kings and a fixed structure, with the Enlightenment came change, political change, different ways of thinking, and the age of reason, the age of men thinking with their brains that God gave them. And some of their thoughts were very, very good and very, very helpful. And some of that thinking was very destructive. The first thing we need to think, and it doesn't go into the pot, is the American Declaration of 1776, the Declaration of Independence. The American Declaration of Independence says, all men are created equal. I wonder where they got that idea from. It didn't come from China, did it? It didn't come from the Aztecs. It didn't come from India. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights that could not be taken away. And among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That statement has had tremendous consequences for the Western world. From that statement and what flowed from it, the US Constitution, the US Bill of Rights, have come freedom of speech, press, and religion, and the right to bear arms. The founding fathers of the United States of America, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, 1776, were steeped. You know, when you put a tea bag in hot water, the tea bag is steeped. The tea fills the water, doesn't it? And you're not drinking water anymore, you're drinking tea. That's nice. The American founding fathers were steeped in the Bible. So when they wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they wrote something which is unique in human history. And they created a system of checks and balances. You have something like it here in the Philippines. You have the executive, the legislative, and the courts. Why did they do that? Because man is corrupt, that's why. Why did they know that man is corrupt? Because they read their Bibles. They created a system of impartial judgment, justice available to all. Why did they do that? Because God is impartial. Where did they get that from? The Bible. They wrote a system of government which protected property because thou shalt not steal. They created a constitution which gave freedom of conscience and worship because God was to be worshipped in spirit and in truth. They wrote a constitution which had respect for women and led to the freedom of slaves. Why? Because all men are made in the image of God, and there is neither slave, nor free, nor Jew, nor Gentile. The US Constitution and the system of government which the founding fathers of the United States created is unique. There is no other system of government in the world ever that came anything near that. Freedom of worship, freedom of speech, restraint of the abuse of power, freedom for the slaves. It did come to that. It took civil war, but it came to that. That came from the world of belief in the Bible. The English were also doing a similar thing. Nowhere else. Not China, not India, not Indonesia, nowhere have there been systems of government that came out of Western civilization and made Western civilization great. Western civilization is the greatest civilization in the history of the world. Not because it's the most powerful, but because it has given It has restrained corruption. It has given liberty of conscience. It has given rights to women. It has given freedom to slaves. It has protected the poor. It has given access to justice. It has given education and literacy and hospitals and so on. If you can think of another civilization that has done that, tell me. And all those rights came because those men were steeped in the Bible. And those rights were guaranteed, as it says, endowed by their Creator. Guaranteed by their Creator, not by the state, but by their Creator. So that is man using his wisdom, using his reasoning to understand the Scriptures. Now we move on to the darkened narrative of man. This is important, what I've told you about America. We're going to come back to that. We move on to the darkened narrative of man. Writers and revolution. The dark side of the Enlightenment rejected the light of the Bible, and man began to build upon what they called the age of reason. Reason without the Bible. Reason would lead to the truth. He said, before us was the dark ages. Now we are in the age of light, the age of reason, and we do not need the Bible, thank you very much. The Bible is as good as Jack and Jill went up the hill to get a bucket of water. We don't need that. We will reason our way to truth without the Bible. The main writers are Immanuel Kant, Jeremy Bentham, Voltaire, and here's one name that you should remember, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, French. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He died 1804. He was the philosophical leader of the French Revolution. He was the one that said, man is born free, but everywhere is in chains. He was the one that said, children are born good. Leave the children alone. They are born good. Their hearts are good. What is wrong is civilization. He was the one that said, we must return back. I'll get this right. He was the one that wanted the natural goodness and creativity and innocence of children to flourish by letting them return back to nature. He said that natural goodness is hindered or held back or restrained by authority, by civilization. God is within, and knowledge is gained by your experience. He had several children. He left them all to rot and die in an orphanage. He was a nasty piece of work. He wrote, and he has had a huge influence on the Western world, that truth comes from your personal experience. Your personal experience. There are no overriding, there are no big truths, there are no meta-narratives, there are no big truths that can challenge the wisdom of your knowing. Experience is truth, your reason is truth. Personal feelings are the most reliable measure and means of knowing truth. Have you heard anyone say, speak your truth? I have. That comes from Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Have you seen anyone walking around with a t-shirt saying, just do it? Just do it. That comes from Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He didn't write that down, but that is the fruit of his writing. Or you choose. You be you. You choose your own truth. Speak your truth. No rules. You choose. That's all flowing out of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. As a man I was speaking to a couple of months ago said, I have my own inner compass. I know what is right from within. That's coming out of the Enlightenment, the darkened side of the Enlightenment, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And it has run, what? Like a rabbit, run like a carabao, run like a horse throughout the Western world. Experience has become truth. In 1789, there was the French Revolution. And the first thing they did in Notre Dame, that's that magnificent, grand, medieval cathedral that has recently had the roof burned, the first thing the revolutionaries did was put up a god in Notre Dame and called it the Goddess of Wisdom. Whose wisdom? Their wisdom. It was the cult of reason. They worshipped one God only, and that God was the wisdom of the people. Reason took the place of God. Rousseau said that reason and truth are outworked in the general will. The general will, W-I-L-L, means that everything, all people and everything they own belongs to the state, and the state belongs to the people, and there will be one leader to lead and transform the people and make a new humanity. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Does that ring a bell with any particular system of government? Everything, all the people and all that they own belongs to the state belongs to the people, and there is one great leader who will transform the people. Does that sound like Stalinist Russia? Or Mao Zedong China or North Korea? That's exactly what it is, and that's where it led to. So, we've come as far as experience as truth, reason as God, and the general will. All of these things are going to have a huge impact on Western civilization. All of these things are lasan naputas, and they're going into the pot. Zhou Enlai was a very interesting man. He was the second in command to the greatest mass murderer of all time, Mao Zedong. I think he holds the world record for murder. Zhou Enlai was his second in command. Zhou Enlai was asked in the West, people in the West liked Zhou Enlai, he had a nice face. What do you think was the result of the French Revolution? And he said, it's too early to say. He was right. It's too early to say because the effects of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the French Revolution are still working. They're still working their way out through Western civilization, and not for good. So now we're up to the new narrative of sexual identity. I had to establish experience as truth, because that is a huge change in the way men think. Before Jean-Jacques Rousseau, no one thought experience as truth. They thought Bible as truth. They thought truth as truth. They never thought experience as truth or your own personal truth. No one thought like that. But after Jean-Jacques Rousseau and this Enlightenment, men's thinking began to change. And so the door opens to the new narrative of sexual identity. Because now we have you be you, and just do it. And experience is your best truth. So we're talking about that now. This is the next Lason Naprutas, which is going into that large black pot, which has got a fire underneath it. And firstly, the influence of Sigmund Freud. He was a psychiatrist, or claimed to be, and he was another nasty man, very unpleasant, like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was manipulative, deceptive, lying. Oh, well, never mind. He was a nasty piece of work. The contribution of Freud, he established himself as a psychiatrist. And he wrote, and he taught, and he had a huge following. For a long time in the Western world, he was like G-O-D, God, a small God. He was so revered and looked up to. But he taught that all reasoning and beliefs can be traced back to unknown, subliminal, or sub-rational urges. Urges that we have within us that we don't know that are there. They're hidden. What we do, the decisions that we make, are shaped and controlled by desires that are within us that we don't know are there. They're hidden. And the primary influence on the behavior are sexual desires, sexual urges. Look, he wrote that little boys are attracted to their mothers and little girls are attracted to their fathers. It's just kunwari, but kunwari, but very popular. So people are governed, controlled by forces beyond their control, the most significant, the most important being sexual urges. He wrote about that. He said he could understand why you did what you do. That's rubbish. But people believed him. He redefined humanity not as male, female, but according to sexual desires. So, man is no longer made in God's image, male and female. That category is replaced by these writings, this new category of sexual identity as the foundational drive that makes us human. The concept of sexual orientation was first used by Freud. He's dead now, so he's got a lot to think about. Now, before Freud, no one was thinking about sexual orientation or gender identity or sexual identity. Now, people are thinking of personhood being defined by their sexual desire. Your sexual desire begins to define your personhood, who you are. Sexuality moved from a noun, oh, that man is a homosexual, that is something he does, to move from a verb, that man is a homosexual, that is something he does. It moved to become a noun. That man is a homosexual. That is what he is. Sexual identity shifted from being a verb to a noun that defines a person's personhood. This is coming from the world of unbelief. From the world of belief, You get the American contribution to Western civilization. From the world of unbelief, you get Jean-Jacques Rousseau, you get the French Revolution, and you get Sigmund Freud. The next to be thrown in the pot is Alfred Kinsey. 1948, he released the book called Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, and then Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, 2 books. He was writing from America, and he made fantastic, unbelievable, exaggerated claims about sexual promiscuity amongst Americans. It was deeply flawed, it wasn't true, but the book sold 200,000 copies in just 2 months. It was a huge, big seller. What you get out of his books is man should throw off all remnants, everything to do with the old morality, everything that the Bible taught, everything was natural. You're just all animals. We're all animals. Just live like an animal. Be happy. Just do it. Be natural. We're all animals. Animals are happy, aren't they? They have sex whenever they want to. So we can be happy by being like animals. If it felt good, do it. Just do it. Forget about the struggle for meaning or the struggle for truth. We're all animals. The best thing that you could do is just be yourself. So that's Jean-Jacques Rousseau coming through, isn't it? Experience is truth. If you think something is true, no one has the right to tell you it's not true. Your experience is truth. If you want to have sex with a man, go ahead. Enjoy yourself. You be you. Just do it. And 3, and I think this one you may have heard of, Dr. Benjamin Spock, a huge influence in the West and probably in the Philippines, I would think. His book, Baby and Child Care, published 1946, sold 50 million copies. That's a lot, isn't it? That's 50 million. Not on the first day, but over a period of time. It was reprinted and reprinted and reprinted. It's one of the greatest, most popular books in all of our history. And he said, he's the one that wrote The Cat in the Hat, by the way. That's Dr. Benjamin Spock. Put aside the old school parenting of instructing your children. That will make your child insecure and anxious. The child is inherently, or the child is in and of themselves good. There is a goodness in the child. Leave the child alone. Stop telling them what to do. Stop imposing your rules, your regulation, your religion on your children. Let the goodness within them come out. Get out of the way, why don't you? Let the children flourish, and you will have a new, free, happy, liberated, wise child that will grow up to be an adult. Let the child decide. The best thing that parents, teachers, and preachers should do is shut up or get out of the way. I do remember being in a supermarket, and there was a man, and he had I think it was a 4-year-old boy, and he was in the aisle, the breakfast cereals. So that's a big aisle, isn't it? Breakfast cereals, maybe 100, 200 different products, I don't know. But he held the child up, and he said, "What would you like? Which one do you want?" The child decides. The child decides what she shall have for breakfast. The child decides what she should wear. The child decides what she will or will not eat. I hope you're not doing that with your children. But that is the influence of Dr. Benjamin Spock. I think I was raised that way by my parents. The fourth point in the new narrative of sexual identity is the sexual revolution and second wave feminism. This is more lason naprutas, to go into the pot, from the world of unbelief. So in 1960s, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there was a sexual revolution. And all the old, coming out of the United States and the Western world, and all the old values were overthrown. The old morality, the old Bible stories were turned upside down. It was the result of affluence. America and the Western world were wealthy. The result of the pill, that women could have sex and no consequences. Before that, before the sexual revolution, generally speaking, if a woman had sex, she had a baby. Now, no more. You can have sex as much as you want and no babies. So just have sex. That's the sexual revolution of the 1960s. And it is the result of everything that I have said before. Dr. Benjamin Spock, Sigmund Freud, Alfred Kinsey, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the Enlightenment, you be you. It all came out into the open with festivals like Woodstock, making it very popular. Sexual values were overturned. The assumption was that we were all living in a purposeless, chaotic world. So have fun, because life is without meaning. So you have free love, and that flows on and on and on and on, till today you have the commodification of sex. Sex is just another commodity that you buy. You go into the supermarket, you have 6 brands of toothpaste, you choose the one you want. Sex is just like a commodity. You have sex when you want, with who you want. It's just something you get. It's just something you have. It's a commodity like toothpaste. It's a commodity of the clothes you want to buy. You choose as you please. There's nothing spiritual about sex. It's just a commodity like toothpaste. And you get the digitalization of sex. Sex available digitally through technology. All you've got to do is go to the internet and you have porn designed for children. You have sex toys available for adults. The average age that children in Australia are exposed to pornography is about 12, 13, 14 years. It's through this. Phones which have access to the internet. If you have children and they have one of these, and you don't know what they're doing, aged 12, 13, 14, they are probably looking at pornography. It's very, very easy. Don't deceive yourself that your children wouldn't do that. It's widespread and pervasive. And then we'll finish off with that point and we'll have a break for Miranda. We'll finish off the sexual revolution and second wave feminism. The first wave of feminism, I think most of us can agree with, that has to do with equal opportunities for education, for work, for income earning, for, driving motor cars, for whatever, for women. I think most of us would agree with that. That's the first wave of feminism. Many of the first wave feminists, starting about 1920, 1930, were Christians. The women should vote, women should be able to become doctors, women should be able to own houses, buy property, and so forth. The second wave of feminism, there were two kinds, but I'll concentrate on the second kind, radical feminism. So we're now up to the 90s, 60s, and 70s. And just remember the ambiance, that second wave, the atmosphere, the circumstances that second wave feminism is coming out of. The sexual revolution, the writings of Dr. Benjamin Spock, and so on. Radical feminism, society and its institutions, its structures, the family, for example, are inherently patriarchal. That is dominated by men, and a woman's subservient role is woven into the social fabric. They want to overturn the social fabric. They want to overturn gender roles. They want to overturn the man is to lead the woman and lay down his life for her, and the woman generally raises the children and so forth. They don't want women at home, they want them out in the workforce, working for a man that hates them and badly paid, but they want women out in the workforce. Radical feminism wants to overthrow the family, male headship, and give woman sexual freedom. And when I mean sexual freedom, I mean sexual freedom, just that, full sexual freedom. Women should have sex with whoever they want, whenever they want, whenever, with no consequences. And that will give them energy, I'm quoting now, energy and self-fulfillment. One radical feminist writes, "The men that women love are also their oppressors." That is, men oppress women naturally, always. Your husband that you love is oppressing you. Did you know that? You should know that. Your husband that you love is your oppressor. He is crushing you. You need to be free from him. Another wrote, "The role of American women are like those in comfortable concentration camps." You know the German concentration camps? They're changing the family. They're changing how women think of themselves. Women are to do what they want to do. They are to be entirely, utterly, and completely free sexually. Then the third wave of feminism. The third wave, this is a big lesson. See if you can get this. This is a big lesson. They change the idea of gender. You think male, female. They don't see it that way. You think a man is DNA man, a woman is DNA woman, right? I have male DNA, my wife has female DNA in our bodies. They don't think like that. They think in terms of what they call a gender continuum. Each person has the full range of female and male characteristics. Every baby has the full range of male and female characteristics, both male and female. Sexual liberation has to do with allowing them to find their own gender. According to the third wave feminists, every person has the full range of male and female characteristics. What decides whether a person will be a man or a person will be a woman is social conditioning. So the boy is given a truck to play with, the girl is given a doll to play with. Therefore, they come out, the boy is a boy, the girl is the girl. Their idea is that every person needs to be conscious of one's own gender identity and sexuality and how it has been shaped by society, and then intentionally reconstruct your own genuine identity. I wonder if you got that. It's a bit complicated, but it means that you, Joseph, you could be in a dress right now, but the reason you're not wearing a dress is because you were conditioned by your parents to think the right way for you to dress is to put on trousers. And when you were young, they probably gave you a hammer, a truck, they probably let you climb trees. They probably dressed you in blue, not pink. And therefore, your parents or your culture made you into a man. If they had left you alone and just let you choose, you could be wearing a dress now. Right now, you do not have gender authenticity. I hope to disappoint you. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you are not authentic because your parents chose your identity. Your parents chose your gender identity for you. You should leave the children alone. Let them choose their own identity. And the child will grow up to put on trousers or to put on a dress, to wear pink or blue, according to their own desires. That's one of the reasons why you get 71 genders. As Facebook said, we want everyone to be their true, authentic selves. All of you are not authentic because your parents or whoever raised you when you were young conditioned you to dress like a boy, to think like a boy, to act like a boy, or to think, act, dress like a girl. It was your parents. They should have just left you alone, and then you would become gender authentic. You would be who you really are. So some of you would be wearing trousers, some of you girls would be wearing trousers, and some of you boys would be wearing dresses. But you would at least be gender authentic. At least you would be you. Quote, when we are no longer asked boy or girl, when that information is as irrelevant as the colour of their eyes, only then will men and women be interchangeable and equal, and there will not be any gender at all. It will all be gender equal. You can be boy, you can be girl, you can choose for yourself. It's your choice, remember. Another one. For years, we have been suffocated. If I get you by the throat, I'm going to suffocate you. For years, we have been suffocated by traditions and morality, the Bible. But now we must have the courage to follow our own light, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. We must resist anyone or anything that stands in our way. We must discover the hero within and enter into the freedom that comes when we become who we really are. I know you must be thinking that's stupid. But the Western world, Canada, Australia, United States, New Zealand, and Europe have taken it. Or how about this one? No matter what they tell you, no matter what they say, no matter what they teach you, what you believe is true. You've all heard that, haven't you? That's nice. That's Boy's Own. Everyone was humming that tune a few years ago and singing la la la. No matter what they tell you, no matter what the teachers or your parents or your pastor, no matter what they tell you, no matter what they say, no matter what they teach you, what you believe is true. There is no truth, in other words. There is no truth. You be you. Make your choice. If you want to be brave, throw off that restrictive morality which has so dominated your lives that some of you men think you're men when you're really a girl. You should be your own authentic self. Well, why was all this so widely received? Because we're in the world of unbelief. And I will be as God. I will be wise, deciding right from wrong. I shall be as God, knowing good from evil. And as Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel said years ago in that beautiful song, The Boxer, a man will hear what he wants to hear. All this, all that I have said, is what the Western world has wanted to hear. We can be free. Bye, God. Bye. Bye, Bible. Go away. We will be free. We will listen to what we want to listen to. And these messages, these words, what you believe is true, have satisfied our deepest longings to be as God. I am somebody. I don't need God. I am significant. I am me. I am as God. And anyone who differs, anyone who disagrees, I can tell you, if you disagree with me, you are a bigot. You're sexist, you're probably phobic and misogynistic. And that's how things rock and roll in the West. That's how it all goes down. That's why we're under a cloud.